G-Man here. Hey, I'm making this video to talk about finding bigger bass, fishing for bass in deeper waters, offshore structure, if you will. First thing you got to realize is that within any water that you fish, I don't care if it's a reservoir, natural lake, strip pits, bass are bass. It doesn't matter what country you're in or what water you're in. They make their comfortable home in the deeper water. Deeper water meaning 15 to 20 feet and deeper. The clearer the water, the deeper the bass will seek for living in. Cold fronts, even deeper. Now, meaning where they live doesn't necessarily mean where they're at all times. But, like our bedroom is where we're at, where we live. But where our living room is a little closer. To them it would be offshore points, ledges, drop-offs. Their kitchen, where their refrigerator would be in the shallower water, where the bait fish and the smaller fish stay away from the deeping lurks of the bigger fish in the deep water. To fish bass more effectively, you got to learn the bass's nature of moving to and from their feeding sources. They will always, like they say, you always find a bait fish, you always find a bass. Well, that's not necessarily true, depending on where they're at in their transitional cycles, moving to and from their bedroom, which will always be the deep water. So, you find the bass in the deep water, they morally and mostly won't bite. On rare occasions they will bite, especially the bigger bass. The bigger bass, they can hear you and feel you coming 100 yards away, and they will shut off until you're gone. If you get there, anchor down and be quiet, you can catch a trophy bass of a lifetime, if they're in their transitional periods of moving from their bedroom, their living quarters, to their feeding areas. So it's a game of finding these transition points, these highways that they use, sidewalks like we use. We safely move down a sidewalk so we don't get hit by cars. Bass use their sidewalks, it's usually a harder surface, a harder structure within the murkier bottom. They don't travel through the murky water, they'll go and travel around the harder rocks, the harder sandbanks, the clay banks, or they'll move through a clearing and vegetation. And they do this within an area of the deep water, their safe zone, if they need to be retreat. So finding hot spots in these transitional areas that they move from their bedroom to where they eat is what you have to find. When they're in feed mode, it's a game of timing. If they're on their way to a feeding zone in the shallower waters in transition, they will strike because they're on their way to eat. They're opportunistic. They'll ambush and hit anything within it. Reaction strike. But finding these hot spots, their sidewalks or their highways to and from deep to shallow is what you need to find. And once you find them same bass will use them same routes every day in and out to go and feed. A great way of locating them, and before they make their transitional path from their bedroom, they will hold on what they call deep water ledges and points. So that is a good time to catch them. They're out of their deep sanctuaries. And you say deep. What if the lake is only 8-10 feet deep, like the Big O? You know, some of these reservoirs in California and Texas, you know, St. Clair, 8-9 feet on average. They will live in the deepest part of that water and transition again out to eat. So finding their transition hot spots, once you find them, you can go to that same lake on any given day, you know, conditions prevailing. You know, if the cold front moves in, they're going to move into the deep water even deeper than where they're living. And the bite might turn off, and you might not be able to get them other than roaming fish. There will be roamers, and you can catch them, but it's always tough in a cold front. But like I said, you find these hot spots, you know, the bigger the bass, the more they group up, and they will hold on these secondary points, a point within a point, a ledge within a ledge. You know, not the first ledge from the shore, the second one. The one that generally drops off the deepest, close to their home. So, find these spots, find these ledges where they're holding before they move into the shallows in a later afternoon of the day. Get them there, or find their hot spots in their transitional routes based on conditions and time of year. Find out when they travel, why they travel. It could take you 3 to 10 hours in a given day to get lucky enough to find a transition point if you've never been to a lake. And it can take you 6 to 8 weeks to find holding spots and transition points on a lake. And that's why it's very important to eliminate 95% of the water before you even get on it by looking at a map. You know, you look at the map, okay, this is the conditions I'm facing. It's spring. They're in the pre-stage of spawn. They're going to be here. They'll be holding here before they move there. Know all these conditions and factors before you get on the lake. Now when you get to the lake, use your electronics and find these spots. Find them where they should be that given time of the year, and when and where they'll be moving by fishing the water. Great baits to use would be search baits. You know, slow rolling spinner baits are very deadly in deeper water. 1 ounce, 1.5 ounces, you can keep them down there, just roll them off the bottom. If they're on them holding points, they're going to hit it. Jig fishermen, they kill bass in the deeper holding points because they're getting ready to feed. They're there. They get them. The majority of your big fish are caught on jigs. Slow-rolled sinking baits, like the spinner bait and the sinking divers. Power worms, you know. Bigger finesse worms. You're going to catch your bigger fish in the deeper water, of course, if you find their holding spot. So basically that's it. You got to understand, big fish live deep, and the bigger fish get, the more they group up together, and they'll hold together on these secondary transition points. Once they get out of their bedroom, they'll move to these points. You know, they'll be looking and waiting, and you know, near the food, and they'll move on up, go into them highways or them sidewalks they use to transition from them holding points into the shallower water. And bass do, as well as pike, northern, you know, muskie, walleye. They don't like light. You know, they'll get in areas where light is low. The shallower a dock is, or the lower a dock is the water, that's your better dock to fish. And especially if it's deeper or next to deep, safe zone water, you're going to catch more of your bigger bass in deeper docks near deep water than you will in any shallow water. They will, in time to time, move into the shallower ones, but the docks that are closest to the water are the safest to them, especially if there's deep water real close. think of anything else I could throw in here. You just got to understand they like low light conditions to live in. They don't like being in shallow water too long. 7 feet's the danger zone for bass. Anything shallower than 7 feet, they're not in it long if they're not in cover. I guarantee you that. Find the deep cover. Find the deep secondary transition points that they'll start using. Understand big bass. Once you get, I mean, it's okay to time management game and roam the shallows. You know, a lot of great fishermen that can catch a good stringer of bass. You know. And mature bass, big ones, trophy bass, are 7 pounds plus. How many tournaments are won on 35 pounds of fish? 5 fish, 7 pounds apiece. Now, you go to the deeper water to get them, unless you catch them in them transitional areas coming from their home to their feeding grounds. And it's always by, their feeding grounds is always by where the feed's at. They're always within 50 yards of that food, and when they're ready to eat, they move on up. Okay, so as I told you. So once you get a good stringer running these shallows in the time management game, then hey, it's time to cull. It's time to get on the jigs, get on the slow rolling spinners, the loopless cranks, get down there to the bottom, you know, and go to them transitional points. They might be on a secondary depending on the time of the day. The bait fish are moving a little farther out, conditions prevail, they might be feeding on gills. Gills are known for always being in the 15-foot mark. Bass could be sitting on them on the primary points, not the secondary. So, start calling in the deeper water and be assured that you can catch your next greatest stringer. Till next time, G-Man here. Peace.